You can call me Mephisto.
Mephisto.
Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel Ironheart episodes 4, 5, and 6 video, the finale. This is it. There's not supposed to be a season 2, but there is a post-credit scene, so I'll explain what that's supposed to set up, because their plans have changed for what it was originally meant to set up. For some weird reason, I don't have any actual Mephisto TV shirts, so we'll have to go with Hellfire Club from Stranger Things. That's about as close as we can get to Hell and Mephisto in the MCU. Probably the biggest thing, though, is they finally did the thing. They finally did Mephisto. We were all wondering, there were a lot of rumors about them doing Mephisto on the series. Sacha Baron Cohen filming some scenes a couple of years ago, because they did film the series a couple of years ago, so it's been sitting on a shelf with them polishing it for the last couple of years. There were a couple of moments during the last few episodes where they tried to tease, oh, maybe it's Dormammu, but then Zelma Stanton became unsure, like, I'm 50% sure, 47% sure, all to foreshadow the fact that it was someone else, with Sacha Baron Cohen's Mephisto making fun of Dormammu, calling him small potatoes. Part of the idea is that Mephisto is basically meant to be Marvel's version of the devil. He actually rules over a dimension that's referred to as Hell in the MCU. It's a little bit different from the actual biblical version of Hell and the actual biblical devil, but it's like the closest thing you get to in the Marvel Universe. His big thing is trafficking in people's souls. That is his currency. So that's what happens to Riri Williams at the end of the series. She's able to sell her soul to Mephisto. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that and why Mephisto wants everyone's souls in the first place. There are a couple of jokes that he makes about what he actually gets out of this. He just keeps telling them, oh, nothing that you would miss. There's a reason why he wants all those souls. He definitely wants to take over the main MCU dimension in the 616 universe. It's basically the same thing from the first Doctor Strange movie, Dormammu trying to take over the regular Earth dimension. But there is a lot to unpack, so the title of episode 4 is Bad Magic, a reference to Riri Williams powering her Ironheart Mark III suit with magic using Zelma Stanton from the comics, and learning about the source of all this bad magic, quote-unquote, which her mother, played by Cree Summer, thinks comes from the Dark Dimension in Dormammu, and is a big reference to the events of the first Doctor Strange movie in Caecilius being sucked into the Dark Dimension permanently. But then obviously the big reveal that it's really Mephisto in a completely different Dark Dimension. Then digging deeper into the nature and the origin of the Hood's cloak, where it gets its power from, which obviously they confirm to be Mephisto. It's Mephisto's cloak in the context of the MCU. It's a little bit more complicated in the comics, but it's the same basic idea. Ghost Rider, Spider-Man have dealt with Mephisto, them selling their souls or selling pieces of things that Mephisto wants. Like in the case of Spider-Man, it was a little more complicated. He sold his marriage to Mary Jane in order to bring Aunt May back to life in the comics during the whole Brand New Day comic book arc. They adapted a little bit of that for Spider-Man No Way Home with his spells, Doctor Strange's spells, erasing people's memories, and now we have the title they're using from that Spider-Man Brand New Day for Spider-Man 4 in the MCU. That doesn't mean that Mephisto is going to be a really big Spider-Man Brand New Day character now or anything like that. This is completely different what's happening on Ironheart. For the most part, the movie Spider-Man Brand New Day is just borrowing the title, not the complete plot of that comic book arc. But the last big time that Mephisto was a real big character in a Marvel production was during the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie. When he became the next writer, the contract that he signed was selling his soul to Mephisto. And Riri Williams, to get the real Natalie back, and to get the resources that she wants to actually build everything that she wants to build. There's a little bit of a teaser that Mephisto might want her to actually build something, but in reality, the only thing he actually needs to take control of the MCU dimension is just everyone's souls. So if it wasn't clear, he doesn't just make bargains with people on Earth one at a time. He does this with everybody all over the universe constantly. The real big twist being, though, not everybody agrees to his bargains. Like he says, Forbes' richest list of people, I only control the top 100. There are only 14 kings, only 3 popes, and 1 beetle, Ringo. So it's not like every single beetle sold their soul to Mephisto. They start the cold open by showing you the Hood's origin story, sort of teasing the idea of this robbery that's gone wrong. It winds up being his father, setting the stage for the reason why he picked all these different heists in particular. There were a lot of questions about why he wanted these particular companies, why he was doing all this. Turns out he wanted to get back at his father. Just another bad Marvel dad. Add him to the list. Thanos would be proud. There's so many bad Marvel dads out there. He probably bonded with Ezekiel Stane a little bit too. Like probably a little bit soft spot for him. Like, oh, Obadiah Stane, terrible guy, probably a terrible father, just like my terrible father. In the flashback, he's trying to rob his father. It goes wrong. John winds up saving him after he gets caught by the security guard. And they don't really follow up on this until episode 5, where they make the rest of the reveal. Like, you see the other side of this. Then the idea is that because Mephisto has just shown him the vision of Riri killing John, he's biding his time, waiting to kill her, or get the team to try and kill her. Their creative use of the title in this episode is a picture next to John's on the wall of their pizza shop lair. We actually find out that Desperito's Pizza, it's a real-life pizza joint in the context of Chicago, but it's the place where Mephisto took the Hood to sell his soul. He just eventually set up shop in this place. This also kind of confirms my theory that the name Desperito was a reference to Despero, another one of Marvel's fear lords like Mephisto. Mephisto's also one of the Hell Lords too, like there are hell dimensions, like multiple hell dimensions. Marvel gets a little technical with the way they explain different planes of existence and like the whole idea of hell and heaven inside the MCU. For the most part, all the different religions are also real, like all these deities are out there all real, live in different dimensions, different planes of existence. They kind of get into this whole concept during the Moon Knight series and then during Thor Love and Thunder with Omnipotent City with a bunch of gods from across the MCU. Riri then investigates the Hood's cloak and learns that it has an internal combustion-like system that powers whoever wears it, but we eventually learn more about it from Zelma Stanton. Like, this is all meant to set up the twist where she goes to Zelma Stanton to get more information about how it's connected to dark magic, and they think Dormammu at the time, but really winds up being Mephisto. Basically, the idea is that Mephisto passes a portion of his power, like grants a portion of his power to the actual cloak, and the cloak itself possesses whoever wears it, turning them into a demon that will eventually totally be controlled by Mephisto, like he'll eventually completely take control of them. If it wasn't clear, it's meant to be a parallel for the way that the Hood tries to control Zeke Stane later with his bionics in the last episode. At a certain point, Mephisto would begin doing the same thing to the Hood. But if it wasn't clear why Mephisto is doing things the slow way, like the long way around like this, if he's so powerful, he basically tells the Hood that he can control the entire city. Want to see me do it to the entire city? Because of the way magic works, Mephisto is also bound by the terms of the contracts that he makes with these people, just like the people are also bound by the contracts. This will wind up being more important when Riri Williams learns the truth of the cost of the magic and finds a way to break her contract with Mephisto, or get rid of her contract with him. Because by the end of the series, she's basically in the middle of turning into another demon, just like the Hood was turning into a demon. But this is also the reason why the Hood itself can't be destroyed by normal means, normal weapons, or devices inside the MCU dimension. They imply that the cloak is organic and is actually just made from Mephisto, like it's part of Mephisto's body that the people are wearing, like the Hood is wearing Mephisto essentially. She can't destroy it because she can't destroy Mephisto, that's how powerful he is. Even somebody like Doctor Strange couldn't destroy Mephisto. You would need something like the Infinity Gauntlet to repel him back to his dimension. It would still be like a really hard proposition to destroy him with the Infinity Gauntlet, but you would actually have a pretty good chance of doing it. There's always a big question about how powerful different characters are in the MCU. A lot of it just depends on where they get their power from and where they are at any given moment. Like Mephisto is more powerful in his home dimension, the Hell dimension, than he is inside the MCU. She mentions looking for Wakandan energy sources, that's vibranium-based power, Kree Stark tech for Iron Man, Pym tech. Part of the reason why she can't detect any energy coming from the cloak is because it is extra-dimensional energy. They kind of got into this whole idea during the first Doctor Strange movie where, yes, there is a scientific explanation for how they power their spells. They basically get magic from other dimensions. It's a little bit different in the comics. Usually different characters make bargains with higher cosmic entities or gods that grant them portions of their power, and that's how they power their spells. Really good example of this is in the comics, Doctor Strange gets a lot of his magical energy from the Vishanti. So later in the episodes, when the Hood tells Mephisto, I need more, like he's asking for more power, Mephisto tells him, if you're able to kill Riri Williams, I will give you more. That's basically the idea, like he'll grant him more power from himself. One of the reasons, though, why she sees part of the Hood disappearing inside the jar that she puts it in is because Parker is still practicing his breathing techniques, so he's disappearing while he's wearing the Hood. Anytime this piece disappears, it means that he's using the Hood. Just because it is so powerful, it's still connected to the other larger piece of the Hood. She and the Natalie AI get into the ramifications of her actions killing John, whether or not she did it on purpose or it was an accident. There were a lot of questions about this because the first 3 episodes I didn't feel like were quite as strong as the last 3 episodes. There are a lot of big plot twists in the first 3 that they basically just waited till the second 3 to pay off, and this is one of like the real big ones. Like, was she conscious in killing John? Like, did she do it on purpose? Was it the Natalie AI that killed John? So I was a much bigger fan of the back 3 episodes than the first 3. One of the other plot threads that they addressed that people were asking about in the first 3 was the Wakandans and Shuri. Why doesn't she just go to the Wakandans for help? She references her role during Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the war with Namor and his people. Technically, yes, she is at fault because she created the vibranium detector used by the humans that alerted Namor, that set him on the Wakandans, sort of setting everything off. She makes it sound like she thinks Shuri would be pissed and doesn't want to hear from her. That's probably incorrect, like Shuri would probably be willing to help her. But because you've probably seen a couple TV shows before, you know the real reason why she doesn't go to the Wakandans for help is because of plot. They want her to feel like she's forced to use magic to fight magic, to go to Zelma Stanton for answers and for help, and to back her into a corner in the finale to a point where she feels like she needs to make the deal selling her soul to Mephisto. If Shuri were to have come in earlier in the plot and help her with all the resources that she needed, she would have never done any of that stuff. She goes to Ezekiel Stane's house to find that the cops have arrested him because of his tech that she left at the scene of the heist, the scene of the crime. There are a lot of people who are asking about this after episode 3, like, the police are going to find that, they're probably going to arrest him. So they're able to trace it back to him, throw him in prison, sort of setting them at odds with each other. But the way they play his character the rest of the series, even though he does want to knock her around a bunch, they do make it seem like he does kind of want to help her. Like, the way they end things is frenemies, not as full-on outright enemies. Like, he tells her, we have unfinished business. Not, I'm going to chop your head off the first chance I get. Just that we have unfinished business.
No, you and I aren't done.
They could always wind up bringing him back during their Young Avengers or their Champions project. Don't worry, we will talk about that later in the video. There are a couple bits of information here too on the side, couple funny things. We learned that he had legally changed his name to Joe McGillicuddy. It wasn't just an alias. Terrible name, like he's terrible at naming stuff, but maybe he did that on purpose because he wanted such a mundane sounding name that nobody would think about him twice. When they arrested him, they found a bunch of black market bionic tech at his main house, not the tech at his bunker. So that's a really critical point. All the tech that he has at his bunker, all of his weapons, all that stuff is still around at the end of the series. And a couple ironic things here too in the background. If you listen to the news broadcast, the people on the news still believe the false story that S.H.I.E.L.D. created, like Coulson created with Nick Fury, to hide the truth about the events of the first Iron Man movie. So they all still think, like the world still thinks, that Obadiah Stane was an upstanding member of society and died in a really tragic plane accident. They also say rest in peace, Tony Stark, because he is still dead in the present day of the MCU. There's a lot of foreshadowing in the background here too, like a couple different moments in all these episodes building up to her selling her soul to bring Natalie back to life. So you could also look at this as a chance that somebody else could try this with Tony Stark, like Pepper Potts could sell her soul to Mephisto to try and bring him back to life. But Marvel is probably not going to do that. They've already locked Robert Downey Jr. down, selling his soul to another type of contract, but for Doctor Doom in Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars. Turns out his soul is worth about $80 million. Make sure if you're going to sell your soul to Disney or a large corporation, you get paid a lot of money, more than you'll ever be able to spend. And one of the other ironic statements that the news makes is that the apple fell very far from the tree when this arrest and betrayal causes Zeke to turn heel, basically, at least for a little while, and become just like his father. Basically, a parallel to the whole Iron Man versus Iron Monger scene from Iron Man 1. There's a lot of lines of dialogue that he has too, like he makes literal references to that when he goes after her during episode 5. While this is going on, the Hood's crew's learning all about Ezekiel Stane. They mention there's a conspiracy theory subreddit based on people who think they've spotted Obadiah Stane running around in present day. When they say he's only allegedly dead and there's no body, that's probably because of the deleted scene, the alternate ending from the first Iron Man movie. Kevin Feige actually had them change the original ending. Jeff Bridges actually said the original ending to the movie was them opening up the Monger suit and there being no body, and it was going to imply that Obadiah Stane had escaped and he would return as some future villain in a future Iron Man movie or future Avengers movie. At some point when they were filming the movie, they changed their plans, and in the actual film, like you rewatch the movie, they do find his body and he's dead when they open it, and then in the context of the MCU, S.H.I.E.L.D. just lied and said there was no body, so nobody would come looking for it. They reveal the Hood's been training to hold his breath for longer. That's just the way that his hood works. The longer he holds his breath, the longer he can stay invisible. Currently he's up to about 11 minutes. It's actually a pretty long amount of time. He sees the news about Ezekiel Stane and then puts 2 and 2 together and sets him on the path to recruit Ezekiel Stane to become his new tech guy and help him kill Riri Williams. Back at their home, she actually rigs up some cameras as a defense system and gives her mother the Iron Man-style watch, like we saw from Captain America Civil War. It was a little bit with his version of the watch, like it was an actual full-on repulsor. But it's meant to be the same basic idea, baking tech into everyday wear.
Don't take it off.
She meets up with Xavier, they tease a little bit more of their romance, he makes more Star Trek references to Spock, she mentions Uhura. I think this is to set up the payoff of the Star Trek quote from Star Trek II in Spock's death, like the quote about Spock when he returns to her in Episode 5. Whole lot of Star Trek references during this series. He actually makes an Ironheart reference when he talks about her heart underneath the armor. They make the Vulcan salute to each other as they say goodbye, live long and prosper. They reveal she's been sleeping inside her Ironheart suit as a defensive measure, but then her mother sets off her watch defense system using the X-Files TV show because of the gunshots. This is actually meant to set up the twist in the White Castle later, where the gunshots set off that version of the watch defense system. Her mother makes a reference to the Kool-Aid Man busting through the door. When she mentions finding another kind of genius, that's also foreshadowing for Zelma Stanton in her magic. When they go to her shop, the Stan's Donuts shop next to hers is a reference to Stan Lee. Miss Stanton is Cree Summers' character, Zelma's mother, who also practiced magic at one point and studied at Kamartaj. They explained that she was a student of the Ancient One until she became pregnant, then came back to Chicago to raise Zelma Stanton. So Zelma Stanton, too, has not studied at Kamartaj, but for a while, when they introduced the character, she is from the comics. She appeared during the Strange Academy comics as one of Doctor Strange's understudies. This is where we get into some of Marvel's original canceled plans and the stuff that they were trying to set up with this series, like the post-credit scene. So originally, the idea was they were going to introduce the Zelma Stanton character on this series, then she would go on to the Strange Academy TV series they were going to do. Wong was basically going to be their Dumbledore on that series, and it was going to be Disney Marvel's version of a Hogwarts series, a Harry Potter type of series. Magical school, but just set at Kamartaj, with them getting into all kinds of hijinks and adventures. When Marvel changed all of its plans for how Marvel Phase 6 and Marvel Phase 7 were going to go down, they basically canceled that Strange Academy TV show. So now, the Zelma Stanton post-credit scene seems like it might not get paid off till a Young Avengers or a Champions type of project, or maybe Midnight Suns or something magic-related at some point in the future. But currently, it's one of those post-credit scenes that might never get paid off. Everybody's still waiting for Kit Harington's Black Knight character to come back, like just join the grave of dead Marvel post-credit scenes that point to nowhere now. There are a couple Willy Wonka references. Her mother makes one, then Zelma Stanton makes an Oompa Loompa reference. My assumption is that her t-shirt, "You're Too Good for Him," is also meant to be both a reference to her selling her soul to Mephisto at the end of the series, and Zelma Stanton falling for the Hood when he tries to get her to team up for more magical power, like he tries to trick her into forming another team at the end of the series in that post-credit scene. She magics them into her lair, which is the western cortex of Neverish, which is also from the Strange Academy comics. It's basically another pocket dimension. When she's examining the Hood's cloak, she mentions witchcraft, which is the kind of magic Agatha Harkness uses, all the witches used on the Agatha series. Also a little bit of a nod to Scarlet Witch because there's so many Doctor Strange adjacent references here. One of the other funny details here too is they reveal that Zelma Stanton learned some of her magic from watching people on TikTok. So I think the idea is that inside the MCU, there are people that actually post like crazy videos that people think are like AI generated, but in some cases, it's people just practicing magic and filming it for clout, like for followers. Like I said at this point, Zelma Stanton's mother incorrectly assumes that the Hood is tied to Dormammu, which she's still very much afraid of, like, no, we need to stay as far away from him as possible. A lot of this is meant to be a misdirect because they didn't want to give Mephisto away this early in the run. They wanted to save it for like a real big moment at the end of the series. We get that scene of the Hood offering to break Ezekiel Stane out of prison, bonding over their shared hatred of Riri Williams. She then goes to Ezekiel Stane's underground bunker, trying to and failing to destroy the Hood, which just sets her back on the course to return to Zelma Stanton for help, like magic with magic. One more random funny moment here too, like she door dashes to the secret lair, which itself is kind of funny, but the delivery driver also gets curious about what her deal is, like he starts peeking around like, what's going on here? There's a brief moment where the Natalie AI grabs Xavier in the armor suit so that he can give Riri a pep talk. She tells him the truth about everything. He learns the truth about the Natalie AI, is disgusted by, like, how dare you pervert her memory this way. His whole talk with her about letting go, like honoring Natalie's memory but letting go of her, is meant to foreshadow how she's unable to let Natalie go, and that's why she makes the bargain with Mephisto to sell her soul in the first place. Xavier literally tells her here it's not going to end well for you, and it does not end well for Riri Williams. Zeke Stane then upgrades himself with all of his bionic tech, turning himself into the comic book Technovore, his comic book identity, and they wind up hacking it so that the Hood gains control over his body temporarily. Like I said, that's also meant to be a parallel for the way that Mephisto is able to control the Hood. He's slowly possessing him with the Hood itself. They mention Madripoor again. Maybe Ezekiel Stane will wind up going there after this. Part of the idea here, though, is that Ezekiel Stane is basically turning himself into an armor suit. Like, he's not wearing a suit, he is the suit. Then the Hood ends this episode by telling the rest of the group to kill Riri Williams, setting up the whole White Castle battle in Episode 5. The Episode 5 title was Karma's a Glitch, which is meant to be a reference to Karma coming back around to bite her in the ass when the team comes to kill her. Also a reference to Riri Williams and Natalie, where she calls Natalie her glitch, like you're a glitch, but you're my glitch. This episode starts with the Natalie AI on her own listening to a recording of her and Riri when she was still alive. It's the same recording that they played at the very beginning of Episode 1. Part of the idea is this is like a very Vision-like kind of moment. When Vision was first born, he had to figure out what it meant to be human. Like, he just kept on trying to figure out himself. That's kind of what's going on with the Natalie AI right now, too. Like, she's a little bit like Vision. She gets captured by the Hood's crew inadvertently because they're just trying to steal the armor suit. They don't know about the Natalie AI. Riri then goes to White Castle with Zelma Stanton to learn more about Dormammu. This artwork here of him is meant to be based on concept art from the original Doctor Strange movie. Dormammu the Cosmic Conqueror, as she calls him, is also his name in the comics. The drawing on the other side here, too, is of the Dark Dimension. There's a little drawing about the toll that magic takes. It's meant to be a reference to Caecilius in the events of the first Doctor Strange movie, where the dark magic they were getting from Dormammu was perverting their bodies. It's the same basic concept that happens to the Hood to Parker Robbins, and then to Riri, too, when she makes the bargain. Basically slowly turning them into demons. When they talk about Dormammu's grand plan to try and take over the main MCU dimension, that's the same thing that Mephisto is trying to do. They're just using different methods to actually accomplish it. Their creative use of the title in this episode winds up being on the White Castle box of fries. Also kind of made me want a box of fries, so if anybody wants to go buy me one, just let me know. There's an okay version of a fight scene, like she herself is not an actual hand-to-hand fighter, like her combat skills aren't that great. She's great with tech, that's her whole thing. Which is why she winds up saving herself using the watch's force field. Natalie then breaks free from the truck with the suit, and they're able to make it in time to Riri to save her with a big old middle finger. Natalie is correct in saying that most of all these problems she's having are of Riri's own making. It's a very classic Spider-Man kind of trope where you create all the problems that you wind up having to solve in your movies.
Did it work?
No.
It is true of pretty much all superheroes in general, in all comic book universes like DC Universe, Marvel Universe, everywhere. As they take off, they encounter Zeke Stane, who arrives to get his revenge using all of his Technovore upgrades. He makes a lot of references to the original Iron Man movie to his father Obadiah Stane. He also references the Alanis Morissette that they sang together in the car. He rips her suit to pieces so that he can conveniently take the faceplate back to Parker Robbins, but he does let her live, which is just to show you how they could eventually work together in the future. It's sort of like a Loki and Thor kind of situation where technically they're working at odds with each other, but they're still friendly to each other, like they still care about each other. A little bit more complicated than just having a straight-up villain. Clown then spots everything and uses this as a way to find out what really happened to Rampage. Riri then, talking to her mother, reveals why she's done everything she's ever done to become Ironheart. It's all because of her father Gary and Natalie's death, not being able to do anything to save them, feeling powerless, in trying to change that. Every step along the way, trying to create a way to feel safe again. That was basically why she was trying to create that griot AI, the Wakandan AI that she was talking about at MIT. They set up shop in Gary's old garage now, saying that she wishes Natalie was still here, also more foreshadowing for the bargain that she makes with Mephisto later. Her wrench here that says property of Ironhead also feels like Gary's love of Iron Man manifesting back when he was still alive. They give us another flashback video of her as a child. When she mentions Mae Jemison, she was the first African-American female astronaut to go into space in real life. Then they reveal she's going to build her Ironheart Mark IV suit, the magic-powered suit, using pieces from her father Gary's Plymouth Cuda. Xavier's old Natalie headphones give out, forcing him to use the new ones Riri got for him, finding the Star Trek theme note from her. Notice that he's sitting in front of the Magician album by Errol Garner. I just feels like that's because of what's happening in this episode with Zelma Stanton's magic. The little kid who she borrowed the wagon from shows up to help and get a ton more money from her. She calls Zelma Stanton to get her magic infinite source of power, like I need something to power this suit. And eventually Xavier returns and quotes the Star Trek II speech that Kirk had when Spock died, sacrificing himself. Of my friend, I can only say this, of all the souls I've encountered on my travels, hers was the most human. But in context, she's talking about the Natalie AI was the most human. It kind of seems like he's also come around on the AI as well, even though by the end of the episode, there is no more Natalie AI. The real Natalie has come back. Probably gonna blow his mind, like, what have you done now? How did she come back? You definitely did something bad. They give them a standard Iron Man suit building montage like you saw in all of the Iron Man movies. Really cool. A couple of funny moments too with Zelma Stanton working magical spells on the ceiling. And part of the idea here too, them baking magic into the suit is meant to show you what Dr. Doom is going to be like when he shows up in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, combining magic with technology to make himself even more powerful. We get the Hood breaking with the rest of the group. He turns on them and his magical scars grow even more across his face, which is where he goes to Zeke Stane to take over him and force him to help him. And this last job, the house that they bust into, is the original house from the flashbacks in episode 4, revealing that it is the Hood's original house, like it's his father's house that he was kicked out of when he was 12. Answering everybody's questions about why the Hood was trying to rob these specific companies in the first couple of episodes, like why these in particular, what do you want this technology for? It was more about controlling all the different companies inside his father's portfolio. I think eventually he wanted a way to take over his father's company too, but this time he's just forcing him to sign a contract like everybody else. There are a lot of people that pointed out there, you don't need to be a lawyer to know this. There's a concept called duress, and at least in the United States, it's a little bit similar in every country. Everybody has their own version of this. But it's actually illegal to force people to sign contracts. So anything that you sign under duress is null and void. So any of the contracts that the Hood made with these people would be null and void technically. It was just one of the larger plot elements that didn't really make that much sense. Like they're like kind of waving their hands at it, like don't poke too many holes in this part. But you get the basic idea is that he was trying to take over his father's empire, take all of his money from him. All because his father was terrible, didn't want to have anything to do with him, didn't even want, like he said, I didn't want you as a son. So this has all just been a very long revenge game that he's been playing since he was 12 years old. He gets his father to sign, then kicks him out and says, don't go to the cops or I'll kill you, and that's the last you hear of him. So my assumption now is that going forward, even though Parker lost the Hood, he lost his magic, he still has all the wealth that he's already acquired. When Zelma activates all of her spells, infusing the suit, the red spell energy also seems a little bit like chaos magic, like the coloration looks similar to Scarlet Witch's red chaos magic. She talks about the cost of magic, one of the costs being the Natalie AI doesn't work with the magic, so it basically breaks down completely. The episode 6 finale title was The Past is the Past, which is a reference to what Riri Williams says to Mephisto when she sells her soul to him in order to get Natalie back. She thinks that she's just asking for her AI back, but actually Mephisto brings the real Natalie back to life. We start the episode with the Hood having another flashback to the night he first tried robbing his father. He shows how he got the Hood in the first place, how he met Mephisto as well. Basically shows up to save Parker from the security guards wearing the Hood, so they do confirm that in the context of the MCU, the Hood belonged to him. He mentions the door, which is basically just a portal to another part of Chicago, Desperitos Pizza, where his lair is now in present day. Tells him he'll make him the greatest human of his generation because he's been doing this since the dawn of humanity, essentially, getting them to sell their souls to him. Also claims he can control the entire city the way he does it with the family in the booth, but he has some limitations based on what he's doing inside this dimension, like he's more powerful in his original Hell dimension. Also the idea that if he does something too overt, too big, then Doctor Strange, Wong, the other good sorcerers, the other powerful beings will try to stop him. While this is happening, notice the red light shining on him from the background. This is before he's revealed his name is Mephisto, like they say that for the end of the episode, but we all know the truth. We know what's going on here. He mentions the something that Parker won't even miss, which is his soul. When he says soon he'll look like the king that he was born to be, he's actually talking about how the magic will pervert his body and he'll start to look more like an actual demon. Like eventually this Hood will possess you completely and you will become a demon fully under my control. Their creative use of the title this time is the food spread on the table, and weirdly he makes Zeke Stane eat a bunch of food. We go back to Riri, and she mentions magic bringing Natalie back. That's just meant to foreshadow the end of the episode when Mephisto literally does that. Parker then calls a meeting with him in his special room where he seems like he's been keeping his hood this whole time, notes his new British accent like you sound different this time. When he references he's been busy with other clients that have kept him all over the place, he makes deals like this with people constantly all over the universe. Like I said, not everybody accepts his deals, which is why he has not taken over the main MCU dimension yet. There are a couple other funny moments during their talk here too. Mephisto mentions Shakespeare was a twat, implying that he sold his soul to him and that's why he became a famous writer. Also the references that he makes to Riri later, like the Beatles. When he mentions replacing him with someone more appreciative, he's talking about Riri Williams signing over her soul, which she does later in the episode.
Why don't I just replace you with someone more appreciative?
She winds up helping Zeke break Parker's control, and when he says they're not done, like I mentioned, that just means that he will return in some future project and they'll be frenemies. When they say using her powers to stop speeding trains, that feels like a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 reference. Saving a city from an asteroid also feels like an Avengers Age of Ultron reference when he tried to drop a giant piece of the country, creating a massive extinction-level impact. We're actually going to get James Spader back as a version of Ultron during the new Vision series next year. I don't know if Riri Williams or any of these characters are going to guest star on that. My assumption is no, but there's always a possibility. We get to see some of her new magical suit's abilities. One of them is blocking the Hood's ability to go invisible, like a spell to counteract the way the magic of the Hood works. He starts to actually full-on become a demon, and she makes it seem like she sacrifices the armor in a last-ditch explosion, but tricks him with the hologram and is able to take the Hood from him. This leaves him without any magic, setting up the post-credit scene where they imply that he's going to trick Zelma Stanton into teaming up with him so that he can acquire more magical power eventually. She leaves, then finds Mephisto on the way out sitting at the same booth in the same spot where he made the original bargain with Parker, and the mutual acquaintances that they both know that he mentions are Parker and possibly some other Marvel characters out there. Like, they imply that Mephisto's already made some deals with characters that we know but were not on this series. You can let me know who you think that winds up being. I do not think that's meant to be a Spider-Man Brand New Day reference or anything like that though. There's a bunch of references here. He makes a Transformers reference. I think the t-shirt that he's wearing depicts a demon. It's another like Mephisto Sly reference. There's just like a lot of references to who he actually is until he says it later. claims he's been watching her for a while, also because he looks for the easy marks, the people who are more willing to sell their souls to him. There's a brief moment where he's stirring his drink here. You can actually see his actual reflection, his actual depiction looks more comic book-like in the reflection on his spoon. When he mentions her building something iconic, it just sounds like he might try to use her to build a device that will help him take over the MCU dimension in a more efficient way. Makes a couple of jokes about Dormammu, calling him small potatoes compared to his power, and that is relatively true. He is meant to be more powerful than Dormammu. And because of funny word play, the way that Mephisto just works in general, selling your soul to the devil, she asks to bring Natalie back, but doesn't specify that it's the AI, and he talks about death being difficult, but not impossible. She makes the deal, sells her soul, then goes home, all seems well, like she's not really thinking about it that much, and tries to refine a better Mark V Ironheart suit, like this is meant to be her next suit that she's mapping out here on the whiteboard. As we see Natalie come back, but if it wasn't clear, like I said, this is the real, original Natalie before she died, just brought back in adult form. That's why she's confused about all the AI talk, like, why are you making Star Trek references?
Death is difficult.
You have to remember, Mephisto said death is difficult, but not impossible. That's just because death is just the beginning in the MCU. When you die, based on what they say during Moon Knight, your consciousness just transfers to an alternate plane of existence, an alternate dimension. So essentially, that's what Mephisto has done, like he's just plucked Natalie from another dimension and put her back in the MCU dimension, the same way that Moon Knight came back to life by just coming back to the MCU dimension. As she hugs Natalie, a fresh magical scar across her arm appears just like on the hood, slowly turning Riri Williams into a demon, implying that it's just going to get worse as we see her come back in future Marvel productions. Not totally sure if she's going to be in Avengers Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars. She'll probably show up in at least one of those projects in some way. One of the other big things, though, is the Young Avengers team, which is now mostly called the Champions, because by the time they actually do it, none of them will be young anymore, like they'll be in their 30s by the time it happens. That's not supposed to happen till after Avengers Secret Wars, so the Young Avengers characters will probably come back in the next couple of Avengers movies, but they won't actually be like a real team and dig into that story of what they do as a team until after Secret Wars. Then we get that post-credit scene with the Hood, Parker Robbins, showing up to try and trick Zelma Stanton into forming a new crew with him with the goal of getting more magical power for himself, probably to eventually get revenge against Riri Williams, but mostly just because he wants more power in general. When he says Supreme-like help, he's talking about Sorcerer Supreme, who is currently Wong. Like I said, I think this was meant to be a play, like a setup for the Strange Academy TV show they were going to do, but has since been canceled. When he mentions party tricks, that's also a reference back to Avengers Infinity War and Spider-Man No Way Home, to what Iron Man was doing, making fun of Doctor Strange, and then Dr. Octopus making the same joke, basically. But there were a bunch of Easter eggs and references, so if you spotted any that I didn't talk about during this video or my previous video, just write them below in the comments. Overall, I just felt like the back three of these episodes were way stronger than the first three. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below. Like I said, there is no planned season 2, but Riri Williams will come back in some future project, be it Young Avengers or an Avengers movie or some other movie. Marvel is supposed to be pushing into a lot of Supernatural, Midnight Suns related stuff in Marvel Phase 7 after Secret Wars. Maybe they could bring Mephisto back during something like that. Really big reminder, next week, the Superman movie is coming out, so look out for my review of that. And then the Fantastic Four movie is coming out right after that too. So it's going to be a really big month for big Marvel stuff. Make sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss anything. Everybody click here for all my Ironheart videos, and click here for my brand new Fantastic Four video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.